The White House has torched Biden's fuel rules and promises cheaper cars and more choices. Now, Washington does not often admit when a policy has failed, but this week, the White House took a rare step back from more than a decade of regulations that pushed car prices to historic highs, limiting consumer choices and attempting to reshape the industry faster than technology, infrastructure, or American families could keep up. With the unveiling of the Freedom Means Affordable Cars proposal, President Donald Trump and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy signaled a dramatic shift in national auto policy, one designed to make buying and owning a car possible again for more than millions of Americans who felt priced out of the market. The timing could not be more important. New vehicle prices crossed the $50,000 threshold this fall, while the average monthly payment climbed towards $750. Families are holding onto their cars longer than ever, stretching the age of American fleet to records never seen before, about 15 years, which is way more than it has ever been in the past. While Washington insisted that the public needed electric vehicles, consumers responded with something entirely different: declining EV demand, high rejection rates, and clear preference for affordable gas and hybrid options. This conflict has been building for years, and the announcement on December 3rd marking the most direct challenge yet to the regulatory regime that created it. Trump's proposal resets the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's fuel economy requirements, reversing the Biden-era targets that aim to push the nationwide fleet toward an equivalent of roughly 50 miles to the gallon. Now, under the new plan, the corporate average fuel economy, known as CAFE standards, returns to the more realistic baseline of 34.5 miles to the gallon, a level that has last been seen in the late 2000s, and the future increases are scaled back to levels Congress originally intended, making it better for consumers, and that means the price of cars become more reasonable. The administration projects up to $109 billion in national savings over 5 years, and that's about $1,000 off the average new car. That's still not enough, I know that, but it's better than them getting higher. Now, whether the numbers ultimately hold, the shift represents a broader philosophical change, ending what the White House described as a backdoor electric vehicle mandate. It's now all changed, and I've been covering this on my channel. For many years, car companies have privately warned that the previous rules forced them to build vehicles the public didn't want, simply to avoid billions of dollars in regulatory penalties. The Biden-Buttigieg standards were so aggressive that they triggered an estimated $14 billion in compliance fees between 2027 and 2032, and manufacturers repeatedly stated that these costs would fall directly onto consumers in the form of higher sticker prices, and we've seen that. When the past administration aligned federal rules with California's even tighter emission standards, they effectively created incentives for electric vehicle production, even as demand stalled. The CAFE standards were never meant to serve as a lever to transform the marketplace, yet it is exactly what it was being used for. The consequences were undeniable. Auto manufacturing in the United States fell more than 50% during the Biden years. Billions of dollars were spent on EV charging projects that we've covered here that delivered almost nothing tangible. $5 trillion was allocated for only 9 electric charging stations that were actually built nationwide at a cost of $8 billion. States like California continued to face rolling blackouts, even with EVs representing just 2.3% of the vehicles on the road. Experts repeatedly warned that if EVs reached the 10% level that they want in the national fleet, America would see daily power shortages under the current infrastructure conditions. Meanwhile, buyers who did not want an EV, and the polls consistently show that that was the majority, were left with fewer options and higher prices. The Trump reset seeks to reverse much of that. The announcement highlighted a wave of new investment from American auto manufacturers responding to the regulatory shift. Stellantis committed $13 billion to expand manufacturing in the United States, including increases in Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler production. Ford pledged $5 billion for U.S. facilities and noted that 80% of its vehicles, including all trucks and Mustangs, were already built in America. General Motors announced $4 billion to bring production back from Mexico while retooling plants for a broader range of consumer choices. The United Auto Workers, who normally cautiously support Republican-led reforms, offered support because the changes are directly increasing jobs, U.S.-based jobs, and domestic manufacturing demand. All good news. This proposal also includes a significant tax component with strong backing from the National Auto Dealers Association. The new deduction on American-built vehicles is a meaningful change that lowers the effective cost of financing and encourages buyers to buy cars that are made here in the USA. At a time when many families are locked out of the new car market entirely, this financial relief is a practical step toward restoring affordability. One of the most overlooked aspects of the announcement is the Congressional Review Act. This action signed earlier this year, which formally eliminates California's special emissions waiver. The three resolutions passed both chambers of Congress and were signed on June 2025 by President Trump, tearing down the regulatory structure that allowed California to dictate national vehicle policy. This ended the EV mandate, embedded in federal regulations, and paved a way for administration's new proposal. All good news for consumers. Still, not everyone sees the rollback as enough. Many industry analysts argue that as long as the CAFE standards exist, whether they be 54.5 miles to the gallon or 34.5 miles to the gallon, these rules remain politically fragile. A future administration could reverse course with a single regulatory action. And some experts believe that if the goal is a genuine reform, the government should consider eliminating CAFE entirely rather than simply lowering the targets. They argue that the government should regulate emissions directly through the Environmental Protection Agency, as it already does, and allows the market to determine the sales mix of gas, hybrid, and electric cars, not the government. This perspective is gaining traction among free market advocates who note that CAFE standards no longer reflect technological realities or consumer demands and stands today as one of the most easily manipulated regulatory levers in Washington. Even Senator Bernie Moreno of Ohio, a Republican newcomer with deep knowledge of the auto industry, spoke frankly during the recent conference. He called America's forced pivot toward EVs irrational policy and described it as playing directly into China's strategic advantage. China controls roughly 80% of the world's EV battery materials and operates the majority of relevant mines. In contrast, the United States holds the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. And if China pushed the world into EVs to gain leverage, Moreno argued, then America should have leaned into its own strengths rather than adopting policies that weakened its manufacturing base. The logic is blunt, but the underlying economic reality is difficult to dispute. The sales data tells its own story. Electric vehicles accounted for only 6% of new vehicle sales in November 2025, and consumer surveys show rejection rates nearly 70% for reasons that have not changed in years. Higher costs, inadequate charging, range limitations, higher insurance costs, and cold weather performance issues. EVs still make up just 2.3% of vehicles on U.S. roads. The demand Washington assumed would materialize never arrived. And the Trump administration's new policy reflects these realities. It restores balance to an industry that has been forced into an aggressive transformation without the technological readiness or consumer support necessary to sustain it. It recognizes that Americans deserve affordable cars, not theoretical savings dependent on regulations they've never voted for. And most importantly, it acknowledges that innovation works best when consumers, not regulators, decide what the future should look like. Automakers will still build EVs. They will still develop hybrids. They will still push new technologies, including synthetic fuels, advanced engines, and cleaner gas-powered vehicles. But the market will decide the pace, and consumers will decide the winners. For the first time in years, drivers may finally get the variety, affordability, and the freedom of choice that Washington removed. Fuel economy rules will continue to spark debate. Some argue that loosening standards will increase long-term gasoline costs, while others insist that the affordability today matters more for families trying to replace aging vehicles with safer, more reliable models. What cannot be ignored is the CAFE standards and the greenhouse gases. They have become parallel systems with overlapping goals and conflicting incentives. Rolling back one while maintaining the other will remain a challenge, and the administration says this is the first step, not the last, in restoring rational, achievable auto policy. For now, The Freedom Means Affordable Cars plan marks the most significant shift in the U.S. automotive regulation in more than a decade. It opens the door to lower prices, a wider range of choices, and manufacturing investment that strengthens Americans' jobs rather than sending them offshore. Whether future administrations continue this path or reverse it depends on political winds, and history suggests the battle is far from over. But for millions of Americans priced out of the market and frustration that being pushed toward products they never asked for, the direction has finally changed. Washington is listening, manufacturers are responding, and consumers are once again part of the conversation about America's automotive future. This is a long overdue victory on its own. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this, and check out our car review channel, Car Smarts. You can support me by buying me a cup of coffee, and if you want even more content, check out the links in the description. I'm Lauren Fix. Thank you so much for watching.